Okay. Um, Hi, Dr. Sam Bailey. It is a joy to speak with you today. And I'm going to start off with a short paragraph that I made to introduce you. Doc-
Cool.
Dr. Samantha Bailey is a medically trained physician who spent over 2 decades in traditional medical practice before pivoting to a more holistic understanding, or you could say understanding of health. In 2019, she launched her YouTube channel, which has since amassed more than 20 million views and over 300,000 subscribers, encouraging people to empower themselves to explore deeper and more unnoticed scientific theories around health. Dr. Bailey is also the co-author of the book Virus Mania, which critically examines how epidemics are often constructed by the medical industry as profit-driven phenomena. Oof, I didn't really breathe during that paragraph. we will
Best.
we will start with some questions to get to know you better. Who are you? Who is Dr. Sam Bailey?
Oh well, thank you so much, Victoria. It's such a pleasure to be here and to be able to speak with you. Well, I guess yeah, I'm a woman from New Zealand. I used to be a doctor. I like Dr. Andy Kaufman says a reformed doctor, and that's what I feel like too. Just someone that's coming out of a long period of, I guess, indoctrination from when I was 10. I wanted to be a doctor. So it was kind of a strange experience to not do it anymore and to find a new path. And maybe like you always have a sense that something's not right, that these things don't make sense, that the jigsaw puzzle doesn't quite fit with everything that you're being told. And that really came to a a crux, a crossroads for me in 2020 when all the craziness happened with COVID. And you could look outside and see that it wasn't what you were being told on the media. And I felt like a real sense that this is wrong, what's happening. We're heading into totalitarianism and what should I do? And I started speaking out and started making videos, and particularly about things like viruses and infectious diseases. And I was heavily influenced by that book, Virus Mania, that you mentioned, and it woke me up. I'm married. I've got I'm blessed, one of the most wonderful husbands in the world, and he has always been kind of my rock and the person behind me that he tests me, and when I'm shaky and things aren't going in the right direction, he'll put me on the right path again. And he was the one that first suggested to me this crazy concept that maybe viruses don't exist. And when I first heard that, I thought, that's crazy. And how can this be? And it was, but I trusted Mark so much that I knew I could see it in his eyes that he wouldn't say this if he hadn't looked into it and done the research. And that was right at the beginning of 2020. And so we went on this journey together. And when I started making my videos, this is verging into my wake up of who I am, if that's okay. But it was kind of like so many people, it's lots of little things that clicked and started making much more sense. And I started making these videos on YouTube about social distancing, about masks, about COVID and what it was, and the themes of virus mania. And in September of 2020, my whole world came crashing down where I made a video where I said I wouldn't get a vaccine if and when it came out because it wasn't out at that stage. And I had a phone call. I was making a TV show. I was a TV presenter for a mainstream network in New Zealand, a health show. And I got a phone call from their lawyer saying, take down that video. And I said no. And then they said to me, well, just take out the bit where you talk about vaccines. And I was like, I knew straight away. And again, I talked to my husband Mark about it, and I said, oh my gosh, they're trying to make me take this video down. And Mark said, well, you know what you have to do. And so I rang them back and said, I'm not doing anything, I'm keeping it. And then I got fired. And then I got my regular job. I got told I can't come into work anymore as a doctor. And I'd been there for like 12 years. And so it was a real shock of just all these things happening. And then the medical council, the authorities in New Zealand that regulate doctors started investigating me. And that has also been a real, I guess, David and Goliath battle that I've had with them because I didn't realize how much they control the voices of doctors and how doctors are compliant because of these authorities. And so it's still going on today. They've caused havoc for me. But at the same time, I felt like this is my calling is to shine a light on these entities and what they do, how they control allopathic medicine. And yeah, and so anyway, it woke me up. And as a consequence, 2 weeks later, after this real sort of watershed moment, I had a an email from the one of the authors of Virus Mania, and I couldn't believe it that he knew who I was and that he knew what I was doing. And he said, "Please, do you want to do an interview?" And I said, "Yes." And so we hit it off really well with the other co-author, Klaus Kernlein, another doctor in Germany who co-wrote the book. And he said, "Do you want to be a co-author of Virus Mania? We're doing a new edition and for the English version." And it was, how it felt like, for me, it felt like the hand of God just helping me and directing me into this line of work. And I couldn't plan it. It was not premeditated. I didn't, even with my YouTube channel, I know a lot of people want kind of attention and I guess fame and stuff. I wasn't really so interested in that. I liked just the idea of being able to talk about what interested me and what I was learning and researching at the time. And my videos have changed massively over my own development as I realized what was important. And you get a bit of a buzz and an addiction when you first see like, oh, I'm getting lots of views and stuff. And then it really doesn't mean anything anymore. It becomes this empty pursuit. And now my my biggest quest is to try and reduce people's fear and understanding health, because I think so much of what drives the industry is fear, is how to sell products, is how to be scared of imaginary entities to control you, control your movement for surveillance, for a whole host of evil agendas. And so that's what I do now is I make videos on contagious diseases and yeah, that's who I am, I guess.
Well, would you like to go more into your childhood? The second question is, what was it like growing up for you and how was your childhood?
Yeah, so I grew up in a very conservative place, so Christchurch, New Zealand, which is a town of like 300, 400,000 people, and very English, like the way it is, so conservative. And I went to the best schools, and I always was someone that wanted to please my parents and so do the right thing, I guess. And so I would get high grades and worked hard, and I did lots of um, other extracurricular activities like dancing and singing and music, playing the piano. I really enjoyed performing, and weirdly enough, one of my favorite games that I used to do was when I was like 10 was like a pretend to be do like presenting, like as a news presenter. And I would like have my friends over and we'd pretend doing like write our own scripts and do that. And I loved it. And I don't even know where that came from, but it was something I ended up kind of doing, and it was really weird. As an adult, I didn't look for that. But so yeah, I have one older brother, and when I was 10, I developed a perforated appendix and was in hospital for a couple of weeks. And I was so taken by what the allopathic system had done that I thought at that time that they had saved me. And I really wanted to be a doctor after that. And I was really determined to get into medical school. It was my only hope, like the only thing I wanted to do. And I remember when I got into med school, it was like the happiest day, but it wasn't. Oh man, it's so strange thinking about it now because I feel so differently. But at that time, it was something I really wanted. So yeah, I had a very, I guess, secure and conservative upbringing and very conventional, vaccines, go to the doctor when you're sick, all that sort of stuff. But also not religious or anything. Kind of, we were basically atheists growing up, so I didn't really have a sense of a higher purpose or anything like that.
I'll ask you about your higher purpose, but that's actually kind of more in a later question. Um, are there synchronicities from your upbringing which you now recognize are reflected in what you do today? Your sense of, well, there you go, your sense of purpose, never mind, and or your personal calling?
Absolutely. Like I say, it was okay, so two things that kind of happened. Sorry, the other thing that was strange. So I used to do this kind of this game of like making these TV like news presenting things and reading the news, and I loved that. And then what happened again around that same time, I don't know what was going on when I was 10, but it was very important at that moment for me. I They had this competition in all the malls, when malls were a thing back then, and where it was like a news reading competition and for kids for a local like news network thing. And so my dad, because I was a very, very shy, introverted kid, like I wouldn't say boo to a goose, really pushed me and said, "Would you, you should do this. You should do this competition." So I did, and then I ended up coming second in this competition. And one of the judges was a drama teacher, and she said, "You would be really good at drama. You should do this." So I did drama for a while, and I loved it. It was something I really really enjoyed, and I really for a while I wanted to be an actress. I loved that whole thing, but actually thankfully my mum, she didn't want me to really do that. She could, I don't know if she knew, but some of the forces and things like that. So she said don't do that. It's and she kind of could see that I've always had a my instinct, as I like helping people. I like and so health was kind of this natural calling, really. I was nervous about doing it. I didn't know if I could get in, if I would be smart enough to be a doctor. And that was something I really struggled with, in terms of my own esteem, I guess. Just would I be able to get in? And I was so thankful that I did and that I could do this calling that I thought it was. And yeah, and over the time, I later on, what was really weird was again I had this I started, so this is going into the future. I started this business like doing online consults, which was the first of its kind in New Zealand. It hadn't been done before, and this is before it kind of became mainstream. And I was really determined to do this. I just felt like I needed to try and help people with simple problems. When people present with really basic things and they're having to wait forever to go and see a doctor, I thought, why couldn't you do this online? So I did that, and as a consequence, I kind of drew attention to myself from this TV show in, the network who saw me, what I was doing, and then they said, "Do you want to be a presenter for a TV show?" And I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is weird because this is sort of like what I did when I was 10, kind of manifesting." And so I joined and became this, and they taught me how to do TV presenting properly, like not like a 10-year-old would. And that was like great. And then my best friend from high school, I caught up with her because I'd had to fly up to Auckland all the time to do this show. And I caught up with her, and and she said to me, "Sam, you should do your own like YouTube channel and like vlogging." And I was like, "What is that?" I had no idea about this stuff. And she's like, "You could, just talk about health things and people would love it. They'd love to watch you and hear about problems from a doctor. And why don't you do that?" And it was so crazy because my friend, she's dead now. She died a couple of years ago, 41, of bowel cancer. And I'm always so thankful that she was the one that kind of pushed me into this direction because I couldn't, you know, how you don't plan these things for yourself. It's sort of like, again, well, for me, I believe that God is organizing it all. And this was really important in order to reach more people, like of what I believe is the truth about health and how to be well. And my husband Mark is has been such a huge influence on me in just so many ways. He's been someone that would see the truth first and kind of introduce it to me, and then I can kind of reconcile it in my own mind and be able to, I guess, deliver it or spread the message to people. And Mark is he's an incredible writer and very creative in that way. And a lot of the language is actually it's his voice coming through me, and it's this weird combination that seems to work. And I don't know why, but it's just what's ended up eventuating for both of us that we're on this journey together, and this is what we're well supposed to do, I guess.
What date did your friend die? Was it in 2023?
Yeah, it was. She died, I think on, just trying to think, I went to her funeral. If it was, I think her funeral was on the 26th of March. But yeah, yeah, it was a really a sad thing because we lost touch. You know, we were very close in high school, but um, I only found out late that she had basically, you know, metastatic bowel cancer, and I tried to help her, but yeah, it was. I realized it was like I couldn't talk to her because she wanted to hear from my old self, and I wasn't that person anymore. You know, I'd changed, and so I couldn't help her, and it really upset me because yeah, I felt like she could have lived, but I guess it's what it is. Oh, yeah, like I say, the one of the other things, I don't know if it's okay to talk about that now, but one, so growing up, both Mark and I were atheists, and another thing that's been huge, probably the biggest thing, has been coming to faith, and that happened in 2020 as well, 2020, 2021. And I guess it was only natural that that would happen because of all of seeing the evil that was around and like palpable. Like, I don't know if you felt that, but Mark has described it in our hometown when they did the first lockdown because it was really crazy. I mean, I know there was lots of crazy places all over the world, but New Zealand was quite extreme because they were doing this zero COVID, this fake kind of let's see how much we can be authoritarian to citizens that aren't really used to it and won't fight back. And we were out for a run at that time, and together and looking over the city. And Mark said, "There's an evil here. There's this evil presence." And I know exactly what he meant. It was foggy, but it was just this real heaviness and something like really evil had come across. And I don't know, maybe that was across the whole world, but it felt palpable. And it was the first time I was really confronted with it, like in my human life, and recognizing that that was evil, that what we were saying. And if there's evil, there must be good. And for us, that was Jesus. But yeah, it was, we both kind of came to faith at that same time as well. It's really, like you say, the synchronicity. And I think it's very important to recognize that in your own life because someone is trying to tell you something and you have a choice of listening to it or not and just ignoring it. And I think we're given choices all in our life along the way, whether you will like little messages to, will you wake up here? And most people just close the door and carry on. But for me, Mark, it was, yeah, 2020 was, this is the point. We have to keep going. This is totally I can't imagine doing anything else. I've got three boys, our sons, and we homeschool them, and I would not have it any other way because essentially schooling is just indoctrination of what government type institutions want the population to be when they're adults. So I'm very pro homeschooling and educating, taking control of the education for your own family. Yeah.
How old are your boys?
So they're 14, 12, and 4. Uh, and my youngest boy was a direct, um, he was, because of 2020, basically, I said to my husband, can we have another child? Because I felt, my awakening process of what happened was I read, I don't know if you read The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. Um, it's a he's a German author. It's a very famous book. And I was looking for something to read during the lockdowns. And I couldn't, I found this book and Mark didn't even know where it had come from. It was just this random book, hardcover in our library. It wasn't mine. And so somehow it was there, started reading it, and it gave me such a sense of peace. It was such a great book to read at that time. And I said to Mark, you must read this. And for him, it doesn't, it's sort of more new age book, but like he does talk about God. And that was kind of really the reason that I think I decided, I said, could we have another child? And I thought Mark would be like not into it, but he was like, yeah. And so now we have the most amazing son who's 4. And I'm so grateful. So yeah, I do thank that author Eckhart Tolle for his book because it was the reason we decided to have another child.
Didn't know how to talk with men or boys, and then now you have 3 boys.
No. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, and I didn't know how to play with them, like, all those things, because there's certain things you do with boys. Like, I'm so natural with, if other people have sons, I'm like, okay, just give them to me because I know what I'm doing. But with girls, because I was always, I don't know about you, but I grew up with dolls and that sort of thing. I was very girly. I loved clothes and all that sort of stuff. And yeah, I found I know how to play with little girls, but I didn't really know how to play with boys. I'm like, what do you do here? It's just like cars crashing into each other all the time.
What pivotal moment or experience inspired you to transition from conventional allopathic medicine to exploring other concepts or perspectives of health?
Yeah, so um ah, it's really hard to pinpoint one particular moment, but there are certain signposts, I guess, of where I could see myself moving in a different direction. So I was very conventional, like very conventional. So this is 2019 backwards. My only difference was it would annoy me about people not being able to access healthcare. And strangely enough, Victoria, accessing pharmaceuticals, that really bothered me. I mean, now I like cringe to even think like that's what I used to think like. But at that time, I thought it was unfair the way people didn't have access to healthcare. And but yeah, 2020 was really kind of strange because so I'm big time into pharmaceuticals and things, and do you know, like very, very pro-vaccine, like very. It was it struck me about more because I came from a background of clinical trials medicine and I'd studied lots of drugs and how they come to market, so I knew that process really well. And I just couldn't understand with like this vaccine. I'm like, how are they going to get it to market so quick? Like it's never happened before. And I'd seen it, so I knew how strict they were. I'm like, this is pie in the sky. They're not going to do it because it won't meet all their regulations. And I had no idea about all the stuff going on in the background of, how it was this pre-orchestrated, you know, result that they were going to do. But when I so back I started making videos in 2019. I just started my YouTube channel. It was my best friend that, I said encouraged me to do it. And she said to me, and this is why I did it the way I did, because she told me like just make videos on like the medications that you're prescribing for people and, do it on that and make them short, like 5 minutes or longer, sort of shorter or something, so that people can watch them and then move on. So that's the formula I initially did of making my videos. And I can't remember if it was like June 2019 or something like that I first started making them. And this was again because my business that I had at that time was all about getting people access to these pharmaceuticals. Okay, so I'm heavily, fully into allopathy at this point. Then what happened was my audience, I had really little, audience, but this kind of active community of people that would like write comments and I'd be like all into it and like really interested in what people thought. And I made a video, I think it was on Propecia, and I got this massive backlash about it. And I was like, what is this? Why are people reacting this way? I'm just telling the truth about Propecia. No, it wasn't. It was just pharmaceutical narrative, but I didn't realize that then. And people going crazy at me, just hostile. And I thought, is this just like bots or trolls or something? And one of the people wrote to my email and said to me, Dear Dr. Bailey, I don't know if you're aware, but there's a lot of research saying that Propecia is not a great drug, finasteride. It caused a lot of harm. And it happened to me. And then he explained about, just in a really calm, kind of sensible way. And he said, would you consider taking the video down? And I was kind of shocked because I had an arrogance, I'll be honest. I thought I knew everything. I'd been through medical school. Who are these people to kind of tell me what I should know and what I should say and stuff? And he really struck a chord with me, and I felt ashamed that I'd made this video without doing proper research. So I took it down. And uh, after that, I made this conscious decision to really do more research and I think um, I realized that the public were far more educated than I was about a lot of things. And it humbled me to not to take things for granted. So that was still, this is late 2019 at this point, right? And I, thought the coronavirus thing wasn't gonna, I thought this was nothing. I thought this is just gonna be you know, something's happening over in China, who really cares? It's like it's a non-event. And then obviously it wasn't. It was building up and becoming more and more crazy. But um, then I started getting like my followers that I developed on the YouTube channel happened rapidly. Like I think I had 1,000 subscribers in October 2019. By March 2020, I had 5,000 subscribers. And by May, I had, I think, 50,000 subscribers. So it just went boom real fast. And like I say, this wasn't intentional. I wasn't trying to be an influencer or do anything like that. I got really passionate about the subjects and I don't know, people just started finding my work. And this is before YouTube, can turn off the algorithm. Maybe I was saying the things they wanted me to say. I don't know. But anyway, so when that kind of rapid growth happened, I was getting lots of comments like and I'd try and make videos from what people were wanting to know about. Like that was my kind of philosophy. And I was overwhelmed with the amount of information. And I said to Mark, can you help me? Can you help me with this? I can't do this myself anymore. And Mark had really closed the door. He had been a doctor. He'd quit when he was in 2016. He didn't really want to have anything more to do with medicine. He was really done with it. He woke up much quicker than I did to the problems of medicine, and he would tell me about it, but I was sort of stubborn. I wouldn't really. I was like, yeah, is it? But he was right. And anyway, so he would help me, and really, it was. Mark's a fantastic researcher, and he was far better at that. And I was probably better at knowing what would resonate with people, of how to communicate, I guess, with people so that they could get the concepts. And like Mark's quite technical, and so I just try and dumb it down, for me, for the audience, so that it wasn't like you're not losing people. And I've got like a bit of a quirky sense of humor. I love memes and I love like movies and stuff, and I love like just splicing them together. And I know it would annoy my audience, but I was just like, I don't care because I like doing this stuff. And so it was just like, you just end up finding your own way. But so yeah, that was the first realization of how much the public knew compared to what I knew. And that was really, so I woke up to first realizing I didn't want a COVID vaccine, and then all of the vaccines fell over. And also at that same time, realizing that viruses don't exist. There's no reason to have a vaccine for a non-existent entity. And that was also the pathway into germ theory and terrain. It was just such a, like, it wasn't just one, thing and everything falls over. It was this gradual process. And also, I'm sure your audience and you can recognize this too. It's a process of unlearning so much of what we've been taught from when we were like little dots, like, little children, of how you experience illness and you frame it in a certain story. Like, I got glandular fever when I was 18, and that's why I got sick, da 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 da, and how we tell ourselves these stories. And what I found personally I had to do was to unlearn and give myself a new story of maybe what, if it wasn't a virus, then what was it? What had happened to me? And I found that really helpful because, particularly in allopathic medicine, there are certain dogmas that are really like pushed onto you. You can't be a doctor without believing this. And one of them is the immune system. And I found that quite hard as a theory to really unpack just on a personal level, because I really believed that that was correct. And I was like, well, what is it if it's not an immune system? What's going on? So it was a real process of unlearning lots of things to realize the problems of allopathy, and then seeing that this is a multi-billion, if not trillion-dollar industry. The health industry is the biggest industry of them all. Like, there is nothing bigger. And once you understand the money involved and the motivations of most people is money, it makes sense about why we are essentially indoctrinated from a very young age to believe in these ideas, because it's profitable to the powers that be.
How did your medical training and experience in the field influence how you later approached critiques of the germ theory, today's scientific method, and virology?
Yeah, so I'll be honest, my husband Mark he's very smart and he's very logical. More logical than I am. I'll be honest, but I think I am logical in general. But he can see things very quickly about when there's logical fallacies and things don't make sense. So firstly, with our training, you are taught to critique scientific journals. That is one of the things that you're taught, but it's very superficial. It's this kind of, you do these things called journal club, and you go and sit with coffee with other doctors and go through the latest research. And yeah, now I look back and think, oh my gosh, it's it's so lame. But at that time, I thought this is all fine. And you're supposed to go through and see, are there conflicts of interest, and how is the study conducted, and try and kind of pick it apart a wee bit. But it's a very superficial way. And I think what Mark in particular became very good at, and he taught me sort of how to do, was with virology in particular, it's this black box. Like, you're not. I remember there were maybe 5 lectures that we had on virology in my first year as a doctor, in my training. The first 5 lectures I think were on virology, And it's like they draw a picture of a bacteriophage and say this is a virus, and it's really, really basic. It's nothing like you don't know anything about it. So doctors don't know anything about virology or vaccines, pretty much. It's just you just aren't taught about it unless you go into that area and then you just learn all the dogma. So part of for us in 2020 was actually learning what was going on in these papers because it's really complicated, very technical, and you're just trying to sort of get familiar with the jargon about actually what's going on here. And then once you can do that, you can really unpick all of it. Like you can see, okay, there's the problem is that there's no provenance. We don't know where this virus has come from. It's they never isolate anything. They never do the words that they use don't mean what normally you would understand a word to mean in English. So isolation is supposed to be separating it out from everything else, but that's not what isolation is in virology. And it was realizing, oh my gosh, this is fraud. But it struck me of being this is fraud, but it's massive, like bigger than I. And then you see it for just the scale of what we're dealing with. And if everyone believes the lie, no wonder you come across as someone who's crazy because it's hard calling it out against the tidal wave of people saying that you're wrong about this. But they can't attack the arguments. They only attack you ad hominem, whatever, because they don't like what you're saying. But I thought, in terms of the allopathic training, what was very good from our perspective was it's very reductionist. Everything's very much down to the molecule and down to the weeds and the details. And I realize that it's easier for us to unpack and for people to take it seriously because we can attack it from a reductionist model. I don't like to see health in that way anymore. I'll be honest. I hate it. I don't like when people ask about, is it this particular thing? Is it this receptor or whatever? I'm like, who cares? It doesn't, this is just a model that they've created. But in attacking virology in particular, I think you have to look at their model and deconstruct it, go through it logically. And that's what Mark did. He wrote a book called A Farewell to Virology, and it's really incredible because it's not never been refuted. No one's done something like it of unpacking all of the problems with virology. And it's a very logical and cohesive work. It's technical, but I do recommend people to look at it. We offered it. Mark created it for free because he wanted it to just people to understand it and be able to read it and get to grips with it. You know, to spread it to the most amount of people. So it's a 28,000 word file, but we actually made it into a book because people requested that. So you can buy it if you want to. But regardless, this I think treatise is really important, and it's people give it credence because it goes through it very methodically. So that's been helpful. Sorry, a short answer to your question. The allopathy training has been helpful in order to go into these areas, but it was something that I realize now I had to unlearn like germ theory as being this established dogma. And another thing we really do, sorry, for our videos, which we always start with the premise of what the mainstream say. So what does Wikipedia say, for example, about syphilis or about, I don't know, dengue fever? We go through lots of individual contagious diseases, and that's my absolute thing I want to do is go through all of the infectious diseases by the time I'm 80 and have a repository where people can go, what about chickenpox? And there's something there. Well, what about this? And it's all there. And we go to Wikipedia and we say, what did the mainstream say? How was this established? Where was the foundational papers? And this is key because a lot of people attack us and say, but there's this paper that happened in 2025. It's not relevant. You only go back to the foundational papers that said this condition was caused by this bug in this paper, and we go through it, and it's incredible that nobody does this. Nobody looks at the foundational source material and sees it for what it is. This is a lie. They're telling us a narrative that's completely incorrect. And the more we do this, we thought, are we going to get some, are we going to find something? We haven't. And this has been going on for 5 years. It just, it's incredible, really.
Are epidemics often constructed by the medical industry? How so?
Yes. Yeah, it's the medico pharmaceutical industry. Yes, it's I guess that was I first woke up to that with the book Virus Mania, and I totally would recommend that book to anyone. It's so well written, just in terms of seeing what they do. There's a formula to this, and once you can see it, you can see the early signs of it straight away, like of when they're trying it up again. And I don't know that we're ever going to have it again because of what happened in COVID. I think too many people are awake, but it's maybe the other book I'd really recommend is another one we wrote, and it was called The Final Pandemic. It's a much easier read than Virus Mania. Virus Mania's got unbelievable detail, like 1,100 references or something, and goes through it very methodically. But the feedback I got from people was that it was too much, that they just start it and kind of lose a bit of hope because it's just such a tome of a book. But whereas the Final Pandemic, you can kind of read, it's a coffee table book, you can read it in little chapters and it's not too heavy, but it gives you the overview of how a pandemic is created and why you don't need to be fearful of them. Because ultimately, all of us are subject to the fear, and that's why we do things. And so, if you don't have fear of it, then you're free. And I feel passionately about this that this needs to stop. The constant fear-mongering and nonsense that we're subject to. And even in the freedom community, I hate to say it, but it's everywhere. It's this, we need to be worried about shedding. We need to be worried about a spike protein or something, like it's so much nonsense. And yeah, especially with realizing that pandemics are a tool that are used by the powers that shouldn't be to control us. It's the kind of the Trojan horse in order to bring about the biosecurity surveillance state. They can't do it without it. So in New Zealand, they have this act, the Biosecurity Act, and we've actually been subject to craziness for a long time. Like, I know New Zealand's this tiny country, but when people come here, they're like, oh my goodness, like going through the airport is insane because it is. They like make you take off your shoes and declare if you've got like dirt, if you've been on a farm, and go through all of your bags. And if you've got an apple, they like take, it's insane, like level of, and they've done this for years. Like it's just this crazy amount about we're going to get some sort of pathogen or infectious like parasite that's going to ruin all the crops, and it's just it's complete nonsense. And yeah, and they would spray like in the airplane, they spray all around with like insecticides before they arrive. This has been going on for a long time. So and this is just the wee like steps in order to get to the fully centralized control, New World Order, whatever thing that they're going for. So yeah, I feel like, climate change, pandemics, there's a whole bunch of them that just all funnel into the same control grid. And if you tackle them and say, you do not need to fear infectious diseases, there are no such things as pandemics or epidemics of like infectious diseases, then it's amazing how it changes people's behavior. And one by one, you get enough people not going along with it, it can't happen. And that's what we should all be trying to do. Like what you are doing, Victoria, it's really important to spread the word so that people understand that there's nothing to be scared of and then they don't have to act in crazy ways like like what happened in 2020.
You wrote the foreword for Daniel Roytas's book, Can You Catch a Cold? Untold History and Human Experiments. What may you be excited to share about the book to someone who hasn't read it yet? What may you be excited for the reader to learn about?
That book is incredible. I love it so much. And I'm friends with Dan, but he is, I know you've had him on your podcast, but he is such as a human being, he is so humble and he is but incredibly knowledgeable. And I have an enormous respect for him. The things I love about that book is that it goes through one of the greatest sort of, I guess, how would I put it, stories. It tells you the answer to a question that lots of us have, which is, can you catch a cold? We all have experienced them, every single one of us, and we all know what it's like to have a cold. But he goes through, and he's done all the hard work. He's gone through all the research. You don't have to do it, and basically unpacks it. And the sections of that book that I am particularly in love with was the sections he did on nocebo and placebo and the effects of what that is on our illness. So placebo is, a medication or a substance that you can give to someone that gives them a positive effect, benefit, and nocebo is the opposite, it gives a negative effect. It really struck me how much, because that interests me a lot, the psychological aspects of things, of how we think and why we do things, and the impact of nocebo and placebo on humans. So just the belief that you'll get sick and yeah, and it will, I think, have a very positive effect on your life in terms of practical benefits. One example is when you understand the basis of infectious diseases. For example, with children, you'll never be fearful ever again of seeing a child with a snotty nose. It just won't affect you because there's nothing that they can give you. They can't make you sick. And I used to have that with my own kids where I wouldn't, I'm ashamed to say it, but I'd not want to kiss them when they had a cold because I thought it would make me sick. And now I kiss them so much, and there's nothing. That fear is completely gone. And I think for so many people, it's such a powerful book. He goes through the history as well of germ theory and to understand how that came about. And that's really important because I almost take it for granted that everybody knows this, but they don't. I didn't know, I don't know about you, Victoria, but I didn't know that there was this thing called terrain theory until I read Virus Mania. That was the first time I'd ever heard of it. I didn't know what that was. And you think, how is this possible that I was a doctor for whatever 16 years and I'd never known about this? And I think that's the same for many people. People don't know what terrain means. They think it means dirt or something. They don't understand what that means. And to know, to go through Dan Reuter's book, Can You Catch a Cold? He's very methodical about going through the history so that you understand where we are today. So yeah, just an amazing book. I recommend it to everybody.
Well, yeah, you just got into the question, how do the placebo and nocebo effects
Oh yeah,
relate
yeah,
to the power
sorry.
of belief?
I didn't realize. Yeah, yeah, it's incredible. Like one thing I loved in Dan Ritter's book was he talks about, because I've seen this, so I've told so many people about this example. There's a study that they did with people that had knee replacements, total knee joint replacements, and it was over about 2 years, and they did a sham procedure. So they operated on them, gave them a scar so that they thought they were having a procedure, and then on half of them, and then the other half they actually did the operation, and they blinded them for like 2 years afterwards and followed them to see, what they did. And their recollection, like whether they thought that they actually had the operation or not, it's not related to whether they had the operation. People had this incredible improvement when they had had nothing. And I can't believe that with a knee joint replacement that they could do that, that would be true, that just by having a scar, the belief of it would cause people to um, feel like they're like so great that they've had this operation, they're a new person, they've got a new knee, and it's not the case. And he does quite a few examples in there of just the power of nocebo and or in that case, it's placebo. But the other one that I loved that he did, he talked about, I don't want to give away all his stories because it's such a great book. Just get the book before you do anything, get the book. But one of the other ones he mentions was, I think it was a person was involved in a psychiatric study and had was an antidepressant medications, was in a trial, and he took a whole bunch of them, like did an intentional overdose and went to hospital in shock. So like his blood pressure was low, pulse was way up, was in the resus area of the emergency room. And one of the, senior officials in charge of the study ran in and said, this person's on placebo, it's on sugar pills, it's not antidepressants. And within about 30 minutes, he was fully recovered. And this is the power. Like someone can go into shock, that they're resussing a person and it's in their mind and it not that they're manipulating it and trying to be sick. They really believe it and the power of belief and illness. And I see that more and more. This is how I approach illness now is when people are asking me about what I think about something, I'm always like, well, what is the doubt in the back of your mind? What's going on for you? What do you think it is? Because you have to address it. You can't ignore it like that's not part of you. Your thoughts are so powerful. And yeah, it's a really great part of Dan Reuter's book that we have to harness that for our advantage and know that what you think will manifest. And I love that of going, I want this. This is what I want in my life. I want perfect health, and that's what we should be trying to achieve, not accepting that you have to be on a medication for the rest of your life or be in the system and be constantly sick. I don't think that's necessary. That we all have the opportunity to be well.
What do you believe needs to happen and/or take place in order for a paradigm shift that is fostered in bodily autonomy to occur in the medical field and the way we collectively view healthcare? And this can be an open-ended question which can involve many different groups in society, such as politics, consumerist culture, data collection and research, and etc.
Whoa, that's a question and a half. Hmm. Um, I think, firstly, I think, okay, so I'm an anarchist, essentially, an anarcho-capitalist, and I don't believe in government. So I'll just couch your question in that so that people understand where I'm coming from. Because, I don't believe that politics has the answers because I believe it's fully controlled, but that's my own perspective. Think what you want to think. Um, I I really feel that it comes down to individuals. So I think you have to start with yourself, like the man in the mirror, Michael Jackson style, that it's look into yourself and change yourself, and then you'll change the world, is how I see it. So I actively encourage people to deregister from their doctor. I don't think the current system works. I think it's hopeless. It's a sick system. It's not a health system. And what I've also noticed for a few years now, at least, is I've come to kind of be cognizant of it, is that people are psychologically dependent on doctors. It's not even like a physical thing. They get totally fearful if there's not the opportunity to go and see a doctor. So, because when I've encouraged people, I say, just deregister. You don't need to go to your doctor anymore. You don't need them. But it's the feeling of, oh, but what happens if blah, blah, blah? What happens if I fall out of a tree and hurt myself? And I really think there's an avenue. And I know for certain places, like in the States, totally get it. You have to have insurance because you don't, it's extremely expensive if you did have a car accident and you're having to pay for, um, the treatments and that. Totally, I'm not trying to deny that part of it. But in terms of chronic illness and disease and health and how to be well, the answer does not lie in the medical system. It lies outside of it. And I feel that people have to become far more self-reliant and trust in themselves and trust in their bodies to heal. It's like this throwback that we're always put onto us. So, like, if you go into a doctor or a hospital and they say, "Well, imagine what would happen if you hadn't come in." I mean, what does that even mean? How can they prove that? They don't have two of you and say that this person didn't do come in and they're dead and you came in and you're alive. I mean, it's just ridiculous. But we're told these constant narratives. And it's also just understanding that so much the financial there's massive financial interests in the medical system. So, and this relates to politics as well. So, if you're thinking you can, I don't know, make it political and somehow solve all the health problems, it doesn't because it's money is what is ruling this world and it will always do that. So, you have to take back the control and change it in yourself. The one of the greatest things I personally did was deregister myself and my children from the system, and I did that in 2021. Like it was a slow awakening, but and I remember the feeling of when I couldn't be a doctor anymore, I couldn't write prescriptions, and I was a little bit like, oh no, what happens if I need something? Like, what happens if I need to write an antibiotic prescription? What would I do? And I came to grips with that and realizing you don't ever use them. We don't use pharmaceuticals at all. And it's just such an empowering position. Like when you get a headache, you don't need to take Tylenol. And it's like you don't get headaches because you're not, you know that it's okay. And it's amazing, just the mindset shift of how it empowers you. So yeah, but I don't, obviously, this is not going to be an overnight thing. This has to be one by one. And I also feel very passionately about teaching the new generation, like empowering them and telling them, that germs don't exist. And because that's where it all starts. The children of today will be the adults in the future, and they'll be the ones, ruling the thing, ruling it all. So it's really important that we share this information with the youngest generation so that we can start a new movement of not being so reliant on the health system. But yeah, I mean, it's a beast. Like another question I get quite a lot from people is, oh, my son wants to I don't know, be a radiology tech, or my daughter wants to be a nurse, or what do they do? And I'm like, you have to be realistic about the fact that they're going into the system, into this juggernaut system, and they can't change it. You can't. It's already like the way that they wanted it to be. The only way solution I see is coming out of it and doing something outside of that system. And there's a huge growth in alternative health practitioners now. I don't know if you've noticed, but it's like every second person I meet, they're not doing what they used to do. They're doing alternative health. I'm like, bring it on. That's great. We don't need more doctors in the system. We need people that are prepared to help people outside of it, and find that pathway to true health.
How can we apply holistic, terrain-based concepts to improve daily wellness and perhaps even prevent long-term illnesses such as various forms of what is called cancer?
Yeah, the key, another book, I'm trying to plug all my books, just by the way, it feels like shameless self-promoting, but okay, so there's this other book um, called Terrain Therapy, and it wasn't written by me, it was written by a man, a New Zealander, a physician back in the 1930s, who wrote a book called Hints on Healthy Living. And so he was an obstetrician gynecologist and he became a naturopath. And again, why I also have so much respect for Dan Reuters because he, was a naturopath, very humble. And Dr. Ulrich Williams, again, a moment of synchronicity in my life. A viewer sent me a book about him called New Zealand's Greatest Doctor. And I was like, what is this about? And it captivated me. This guy, it was like, he's like me, but back in the 1930s, everything that was happening to him, it was just spooky to read it. And I realize he was a terrain practitioner back in the day. And it's so much, all of the teachings that he had in his book, Hints on Healthy Living, we can use now. But his book had basically, he had a certain print volume, and I ended up buying a secondhand copy from a rare bookstore in Wellington. And I could not put this book down. It was so powerful. It's almost like a book of aphorisms where these statements will tell you this is what you're doing wrong. And remember, he comes from the background of being a surgeon. So a lot of it's written in caps, all caps. So it's like he's shouting at you, stop doing this. And I love that so much. It appeals to me, that kind of the way it was written. So in the end, I had so many requests for this book because I talked about it somewhere, and people said, "Can you make this book?" And so I thought, okay. And by synchronicity, it was 50 years since he had published it, when back in whenever it was, 2022, I think. So we could publish it without, the copyright stuff. And so we made it into this book, and it has many practical examples. And one of the huge things I learned from Ulrich is you have to figure out the cause. That's it, essentially. Find the cause of the illness, whether it's cancer, whatever the issue is. You need to find why. Why did this happen? And he has practical suggestions of addressing those. So he goes, one of those sections is like what causes disease and, what to do about it, basically. And I like his approach of he has very kind of similar things that he does for people, and it's fasting is a big part of it. And I think that that was something I did not understand until reading his book, the power. And I know this is huge in the alternative health area, but I personally, that was something that I implemented in my own life, and it's been remarkable. So fasting. It's all about your diet, where you're getting your food, water, the source of everything that you put inside of yourself. You'll manifest. So you have to look after what your vessel that you have, this amazing creation of our bodies that is given to us, and look after it. And yeah, so food, water, and your thoughts. So his kind of statements was it's about right living, right thinking, and our thoughts are incredibly powerful. So it's understanding that you can incorporate that in your life. And he has even a section in that book about why people die of cancer. And one of the things I think was the belief that you can't be cured. And I saw that with my friend that died. And it made me sad because I showed her that this book, Ulrich's book, but she believed that she couldn't be cured. And I'm not saying that's always the reason, but I saw that with my own friend. And um but you have to forgive yourself because sometimes people aren't ready to hear things when when you are ready to hear it or talk about it. Yeah, so I think it's yeah a book I would recommend to people because it's timeless and it tells you about how to be well. It comes from he's a Christian, he became a Christian, so it comes from that Christian focus. And some people it's a turn off. Okay, that's I just make it as a disclaimer because we all come with from a different background, and so he does talk about God in there a lot. But I found that really helpful, and it just practical. He's very good with explaining what you should do. But for anyone that's listening to this now, if you have a problem, you need to think about the cause. And sometimes the cause that you're told by a doctor is not right. We're told a lot of narratives about, for example, I had a patient ask me, or a person say, I've had atrial fibrillation, which is an irregular heart rhythm for a long time, and that caused a stroke. Maybe, but also maybe not. And medical system has a lot of explainers like that, where you go away from the doctor thinking, oh, the reason for my whatever symptom is because of XYZ. And people can get stuck in this, like they're trapped with this mindset of thinking that that's what's caused it. And it takes a lot of humility and openness to see it from a different perspective and say, maybe it's not that. Maybe there's another reason. So yeah, I'd really encourage you if you are suffering is to think about the cause, and sometimes you have to think right, like way outside the field. And just really quickly, sorry, I know this is turning into a long Victoria podcast, but I think this is really powerful. It was a testimony from my husband, what happened to him. So he was a professional athlete and did lots of bike races. And he did a what they call a Tour de Southland uh, bike race, which is a very rough, nasty tour that they do in very harsh conditions, like winds and stuff, quite dangerous actually. And he was racing and in his 20s, and there was a bike rider behind him that clipped his wheel and he fell and he broke the spinous process in his T2, I think, of his back. And he was out of the race, but it caused him a lot of pain and problems. And the rider didn't fall. He clipped the wheel, but he carried on. And Mark continued to have this pain for years, and it would always flare up when things were, more difficult for him. And I remember having to inject him with like local anesthetic into his back sometimes because it was just so painful for him. And then one day he told me, he said, Sam, the pain's gone and it's never going to come back. And I said, What? What do you mean? What happened? What did you do? And he said, I've forgiven the rider. I've forgiven him. And it's like, and it just brings tears to my eyes to think that the power of forgiveness and what that did. And he's never had it since. And it was amazing that what he held in his heart was just this resentment of that, he this guy had caused him this injury. And once he forgave him, and this is just like a decision in himself. It wasn't it's not like he went and told the guy or anything. It was a personal forgiveness that he made. And he was relieved of this pain. And it's that's just one element of what causes disease. And it's just really important, I think, for people to realize that, sometimes what we're told, the story of why we have a certain condition. So in Mark's example, I had an accident and I broke my spinous process. That's why he thought he had pain. Yes, that did happen, but it's not the cause of his pain. And sometimes it takes some real digging, like internally in your mind, in your consciousness, to think, why is this happening? What are my thoughts? What's actually going on here?
For listeners skeptical of traditional medicine, yet wary of rejectionism, how do you suggest they critically explore both conventional and alternative approaches without getting lost in misinformation?
Mm, that, that's a really good question. Uh, it's hard. Do you know, as a general philosophy I have is that it's like trying to wake people up that aren't ready to hear things. It never works. And I think it's because what I do with our information that most of it we make for free because we're trying to reach people and empower them and give them some sense of control, lose the fear, um, is that they come to me, they find me, and I don't know how it happens. Half the time it's like, I've only just discovered you and I love it and whatever. And they're ready to hear it. And I don't know if this is God, but that you're brought into hearing the information at the right time, like when you need to hear it. And it's so difficult because people ask us all the time, how do I wake up someone? Or I need to talk to my daughter, they're not listening and they're vaccinating their child, or whatever it is. And we always say, you can't wake them up. It doesn't, it has to come from the person. It has to be something, a spark in them that connects, and everyone's different. Like for you, and this was the same, like hearing Andy Kaufman and saying viruses don't exist. What? But you were kind of ready to hear it, like it's on some level that message needed to come to you. And I think Andy Kaufman, man, I love him for that he has reached so many people. And that I think was his gift of connecting with people with these kind of really like a shocking thing like viruses might not exist. Um, but yeah, with like how to approach it, it's a really tricky thing, and I don't have a formula for it. I just think you have to search, you have to seek it, and you'll find the answers. But it won't come if you're not looking. So if someone's fearful of rejectionism, I'm not sure if I know exactly what that means, but being rejected by the medical system or something like that, um, they're not ready. Like the fear is still there. So another thing I'll just do it as a caveat, like a couching. What I'm talking about is people ask me, can I stop my statins? What should I do? And like the answer is yes, you can. But the problem with that is it comes down to what the person believes will happen to them. Again, nocebo. If they are very much invested in the medical system and believe what the doctor's telling them and are worried about disappointing the doctor, or I'm not sure, I'm just making up possible reasons, it is not a good idea to stop the statin because they will believe that harm will come to them if they stop it. So, really important is that you don't do something that you're not kind of ready for. And I look at that in myself since 2020, I've changed massively in 5 years. Certain things have become far more crystal clear to me that were hazy. And I needed that confirmation over time. I needed to test things myself, and in particular with health. Like when I had my son, I gave birth to him. I developed a real nasty mastitis infection, breast infection from breastfeeding, like an abscess. And okay, I didn't go in at all. Like I didn't go in, I wasn't diagnosed, but I clinically could tell that was what was going on. I was spiking fevers, I was vomiting, I was like really sick with it. If I had seen myself 10 years ago, I would have said, you need to go into hospital for surgery and IV antibiotics, right? And I knew that, like the back of my mind of what the allopathy was, the voice in my head, I guess, was telling me. But I also had this real faith that terrain is correct. And so what I did is I fasted, and it was really sore. It was really unpleasant. It went on for about 12 days. I was very sick, but I recovered completely, healed, no problems. Nothing happened to my baby. I was well. And again, that's that scenario of going into the doctor and them saying, imagine what would happen if you didn't. And I experienced that for myself, and I knew it, like asserted it in my own mind that we don't need the health system. Our bodies is everything that we need. I mean, you've got to have the right nutrition. Don't get me wrong. You've got to look after yourself and have a nice, like a warm house. And there's lots of little things that are very important. but you don't need this external system to cure you or whatever. And that inner knowing can only come through experience and trialing it yourself. And so I do encourage people, if they're ready, to just see what happens. And you've always got the backup if you want to go into that system. And I would never blame someone for choosing that. I think you have to be ready to hear it.
Yeah, I am sorry that this is going on long. Do you have a time constraint or do
I'm
you?
fine as
Oh,
long as
okay.
it's not too long for you. I always feel bad because I'm like, I have been talking a lot.
Oh
So
no,
I'm
no.
fine. I've got time.
Oh, I've got time too. Yeah, because I definitely want to hit all of these. I do want to hit
Yeah,
all of these.
let's
Okay,
do it.
awesome. Okay, good. Um, how has public response and reaction shifted as you've become increasingly vocal about health topics, which may be considered controversial in today's era?
So do you mean public reaction to me or just in general?
It could be to you. It could be to the like terrain health community that you're
Oh, yeah.
around.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so I can comment on both. So individually, like I lost all my friends. I'll put it out there. It was bad. No, it wasn't. It was a gift. It was a gift from God. It was, I had, when you trained as a doctor, like all your friends are doctors. That's the way it is. So, maybe if you're in the military, all your friends are military, I don't know. But that's the way it is in medicine. And I lost all of them, pretty much. Yeah, I'm not friends with any of them anymore. And I'm okay with that because I found this amazing community that we're part of. You and me, it's the best thing in my life. Um, so yeah, the reaction, I guess, to fanatical virus believers was bad. But to the terrain idea, they think I'm a nut. And okay, I probably, if I'm perfectly honest, if I looked at myself from, a 10-year ago, myself looking at me now, I'll be like, what is, what has happened to you? And like we have friends, oh, sorry, real funny segue, but we've had friends come to see us that we haven't seen for ages, and they've known that I've been speaking out, da da da. And they thought when they said met us again, they said, I thought you were going to be like a hippie. You're like normal. Yeah, this is how the mainstream media portray me. Anyway, the terrain community, what I think is really exciting is that um, it has grown. It has become a force in itself. Because you know what? I could see it. We've looked at the white papers that they initially published. This is prior to COVID, about again predicting what was going to happen with, the reaction. So it was always anti-vaxxers. That was the kind of line. It's the anti-vaxxers that you need to worry about. They didn't predict the no virus community or the terrain, community. That was not part of their white papers. And I think it's thrown such a spanner in the works because it completely kneecaps them. Like they can't, where do you go when there's no virus? There are no vaccines, and then you start questioning all sorts of stuff about antibiotics, and you go into germ theory properly and just realize it's all bunk that you don't need any of this stuff. So it's yeah, I think it's really cool actually, like a very positive thing. And there's so many amazing people, Victoria, I'm sure you come across them, that were kind of these were the giants that we're standing on their shoulders of that paved the way for what we're doing now. I'm talking, I mean, people that are they're alive now, but they were really prominent back in the late 90s and stuff about HIV and AIDS. So Stefan Lenker, and one who I'm very fond of is Eleni Papadopoulos-Eliopoulos, who was probably one of the smartest people you'd ever meet, physicist in Australia, who was very vocal with the Perth group about HIV existence. And have the privilege of being able to stand on their shoulders and reach more people because back then it was like people meeting in a in a room and there was like 8 people, like talking about this stuff. Now we have the internet and this amazing way of being able to connect with people from all over the world who think like we do, and we can spread the message out there. And it amazes me who you can reach and how these another lovely chap, Jim West, who he really did the first graphs of DDT versus polio, and realized that they were the same. The, and so that there was a relationship there, and he kind of graphed it properly. He's an amazing researcher. And he said to me, and it's always, I did an interview with him, his big thing is about toxicology versus virology, that the problems that they blame on virology is actually toxic poisons. And he said, Sam, what I've noticed is that back in the day, no, like nobody knew about no virus. That's not a like you couldn't it was just very esoteric and random that people would know about it. But he said now you can go into a bar and someone over on the side part of the room is talking about no virus. And it is like that. It's incredible that you think, like, I just know, I don't like, I'm really not a boastful person. I don't like tooting my own horn about things because I think it's not about that. But, I'm recognized in places like locally, like we were at the airport and I was running with Mark to get to the gate on time. And a random guy was sitting and he yelled out something and Mark went to him and he's like, legends. And you're like, what? It's so random, like in an airport that would happen. And this does happen more frequently now. And you realize that the reach is incredible and people know about this stuff. And that's, to me, is the greatest gift ever, is that people know about it and are open to it. So yeah, it's really, really exciting in a way. And I think it's hopefully, I'm praying that in my kids' lifetime that they might see the eventual, shift or change. But I don't know. It might take a long, long time. But it's still it's positive. It's moving in the right direction, which is great.
What upcoming projects, such as a new book, documentary, or platform, are you currently embarking on or enthusiastic to share next?
Yeah, we haven't got any books. Do you know, writing a book is a lot of work. And I can't, almost the amount of content that we've made, I can't even believe we've done it, to be honest. Like Mark and I work pretty much full time. Like we stay up ridiculously late, like 1 o'clock in the morning sort of thing, just doing our work because we love it. And it's not, to me, it's not a burden. It's a real, like you say, a calling. It's a passionate thing that I feel very strongly about. The main thing that we're working towards right at the minute is we're coming to America, which is really exciting for Salt Lake City. The Western A. Price Foundation are doing a conference, and Mark's a keynote speaker, and I'm doing a couple of speeches as well. And it's so exciting because we get to meet, like this to me is, I'm just fangirl. I get to meet Andy Kaufman, Tom Cowan, and lots of other people that I have had a huge impact on our lives. And I can't go into the details, but recently I wasn't sure if we'd be able to go. The authorities have been making it very, very difficult for me to leave New Zealand. And I think we're going now, so that's really exciting. Because yeah, we last were in the States, 2016, and I don't know what's going to happen. I'm a little bit nervous about going through customs. Hopefully, it will be smooth. But it's just to be amongst people that like Western A Price is just, to me, I'm so thrilled that they're just such an amazing organization and it aligns with what we believe in 100%. So I'm really excited just to be able to be at a real like conference event because we get invited to a lot of things, but we can't go. We're just too far away. It's just not practical. We have kids, and our kids aren't coming with us for this because it will be very, very busy. And it's just all those sorts of things that, yeah. I've always believed my family is number one, and I have wanted to protect my kids from this world as much as I can because it is can be hostile and crazy. And but they're what I love about children is that they're so open and so loving that they don't even care about what happens to you. Like sorry, just as a random story, when the medical authorities they've like I was struck off from the register, medical register, and I was like, yes, thank you. It's finally happened. But at the time they had like this media circus for like a week. It's in the papers on front page and stuff because they love this kind of gossip. And anyway, I, at the time, because there was lots of stories, I was getting lots of orders for Virus Mania to post because it was in the New Zealand media a lot. And so I was like, okay, I'll go and down to my local post office, right, to post some books. And the lady saw how many books I had, and she's like, "What is this? What is your book about? What are you sending?" And I said, "Oh, it's my book." And she said, "What's it called?" And I said, "Oh, Virus Mania." Oh, yep. There's lots of people getting sick with viruses, aren't they? I said, "Yeah, but you know, it's not something you need to worry about. It's okay." And she said, "Oh, yeah, yeah, no, it's fine." And then she was asking me to pay, and then I glanced down on there's like a display of the main newspaper, and I'm on the front page there. And because I don't get the newspaper or anything, I didn't know that. And so the lady that's serving me, I'm just like observing, like I'm on the page. She doesn't recognize. There's no like realization at all. And I'm like, oh, that's quite cool. And then I went home and I said to Mark, oh, I'm on the front page about this tribunal thing, and told him the story. And my boys, oh, I just love them. They don't care. They don't, it's not even, they just don't give a stuff. They are so lovely. And that to me is, yeah, everything. So anyway, sorry, long story short, we try and keep it separate. So, yeah, we are going to the Western Day Prize, but not as a family. And I think it would be a little bit stressful for my 4-year-old, if I'm perfectly honest, because it's just very busy. But we can't wait to be able to meet all of my heroes as well. So yeah, it's really exciting. What I'm excited about is that we're doing this Q&A panel with Andy and Tom, me and Mark, and like almost this will just make it for me. I'm just like, if I can do this in my life, okay, I'm done. Everything's good now. I've done the that's so cool. So yeah, but it's yeah, I'm not sure. It's just the logistics, I guess, of people getting to Salt Lake and that kind of thing. But it's for me, when we got this opportunity, I just thought because like I say, we do get asked quite a bit to go to places, and we universally have said no because it's just really hard. But this was something that I thought it's really special, and I wanted to go. So, and I don't know when we'll next be back in the States. So, yeah, it's just, but they'll have it. They're going to be filming it, like, so they'll play. So if you can't go, I know that you can get the replays and stuff. If that's yeah, but I guess it's just different being able to see people in person.